Big losses. What losses? Chelsea released their financial accounts and it's record-breakingly the other direction. Newcastle too. Apparently, if you qualify for Europe, you then have to pay. You then can get excluded out of Europe for not having money and stuff, or having too much money, or selling your stadium to yourself. What does it all mean? And what could it mean for the likes of and the future of manager Eddie Howe? Find out right here on Toon Tactics TV, folks.
Oh, brilliant from Shea. And now Murphy could take on the shot. Bobby and Shea win!
All right, folks. How are you all doing? I'm looking at myself for this. I keep on going on about it, but this new camera, I'm like, this is Jesus, like it's all feeling all technical and in good vision and stuff like that. So just excited to have a good equipment. More excited to be doing another live show with you guys as always. And I hope wherever you are, whatever you guys are doing, I hope you guys are blessed, because you could have been anywhere in the world doing anything else, but you are right here with me and with our friend of the channel, Bobby Fairview, who's going to be here with us. But you are here with us, and God bless you, folks. It's Thursday. If you're not from the UK, like my man Ches here, who's from South Africa, good to see you, Ches. We're here once again. We're international Toon. That's what we are. It's we're going to have an extended bank holiday. It's the bank holiday Friday and Monday. So happy Easter to all those that celebrate. I celebrate, obviously, as a Christian myself, but to all my fellow Christians, brothers and sisters, happy Easter to you guys. And as always, big up to all the Toon fans from around the world. I can actually say that because we've got actual fans from around the world. What a blessing to be able to say that. So great to have you. Great to have you all guys on the show tonight. And I'm super excited to be talking the show today, because we are going to be discussing, we're going to be kicking off the show talking about obviously the financial intricacies and big bombshells from Chelsea's financial announcements, and we've got none other than the main man himself, Bobby Fairview. No one better to discuss finances with him than himself. But also, we're going to be talking about Newcastle's and what it means, and all these numbers that have been banded about how much Newcastle could spend or won't spend and stuff like that. We're going to try and drill down those numbers today. But we're also going to be talking about Eddie Howe and his future. Some supposed news from either UAE or someone who is from the UAE with a massive following making claims in regards to Eddie Howe himself. So really looking forward to that. But before I announce get my guest, and I want to say big up to Ches, my man here from South Africa. God bless you, Ches. Good to see you again. He says, hi all. Hi, Philip. Back again. Great to see you back. Always good to see folks coming back and subbing, liking, and sharing. It's all due to all of you guys doing that. So I am super helpful. Got tons of other people. I'm going to get back to that one, Ches. But even into Adrian, God bless you. Good to see Ches. My man James, IMA. Always good to see that IMA from my man James. Good to see you, sir. Absolute blessing. Oh yeah, we do have a new sponsor. Fort Knox has started. It has. And good to see my man Connor. Big up, Connor. Big up to you, and God bless you. But all right, like I said, he's no longer a special guest. He is a friend of the channel. And guys, I have to tell you, I'm blessed to be, because I've got no financial expertise whatsoever. And we're so blessed to have an expert in the likes of Bobby Fairview. And I'm telling you, in the backgrounds, he's sending me all these accounts and stuff like that, and I'm having to put it all together. But it's you can tell that he's gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and he's gone forensically through it. And it's what gives me, and hopefully adds that context and substance. And so we're so blessed to have him. He's beginning to blow up on our social networks as well, and rightfully so, because he provides meaningful and substantive content. Let's introduce to our show none other but Mr. Fairview himself. How you doing, Bobby?
Big up, Philip. Big up to the chat. Happy to be here. Like and subscribe, guys. I need to get accustomed saying that because I'm on YouTube so often these days. I am not a content creator, okay? And I'm trying not to get into that mindset. But look, you know what? People are keen for information. People are keen for points of view that are grounded in data, which is actually my attraction to this channel in the first place. I know that you're data driven yourself. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to share my personal perspective on what I'm observing at Newcastle. Exciting times.
100%, 100%. Great to have you on the show. So we've got a lot to talk about. I forgot what I was going to start the show off with now. I've got tons. I'm like, whoa, I'm going through the script. Am I going to start with
Chelsea? Let's get the bad story out of the way.
So let's get on with Chelsea. Record breaking losses is the main headline. I know that, and then there's a lot more behind it, but essentially record. Let me just like lay out to folks, especially for folks that are just new to the show and might not know Bobby and just everything else, because I think it's important because the headline is record breaking losses for Chelsea, although there's different agendas and or different people announcing different things and saying, but they're projected for this amount of revenue, and they've got, I think, 4.5 million in kind of revenue and stuff like that. But I remember when these announcements and these first came out, and the first thing I do always think of is Bobby, because I feel like when we first started this, like, I don't know, 6 to 8 months ago, a year ago, I feel like Bobby's been kind of predicting this stuff. So just wherever you guys are going to hear from Bobby today, this ain't him like jumping on the bandwagon or on the, like, just he's been talking a lot of this stuff a lot sooner. So Bobby, take it away. Like, what is happening with Chelsea? What's all this? What's beyond the headlines, essentially? What's going on?
Sure. I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend I'm some sort of oracle or something. I mean, I'm just a boring little accountant sitting in Bermuda, just observing things on X and in the news. And so a regular fan who really came to X just to vent whenever we lose a game or when something stupid happens to Roman. But what I've realized over time is that fans actually have a thirst to understand the numbers behind what they're seeing. So I want to say within the last year or so, I started to publish my insights on X in terms of, purely from a finance perspective as to what's happening at the club. Newcastle fans may not suffer from this as much, but the PR behind what happens at Chelsea is Manchester United, Arsenal levels. Yeah. It's a bit mad.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
And unfortunately, a lot of it is never truthful, right? I've been, screaming at the clouds for the last year that blue coal can sell. There's been this rumor going around, started by Sky News, believe it or not, that there was some restriction on the sale of Chelsea for 10 years. Maybe you've heard that yourself.
Yeah.
But it's not a real restriction if that restriction is a restriction imposed by the owners on themselves. So in other words, they have the ability to decide to remove the restriction from themselves. It's like you, the owner of Toon Tactics TV, saying that I'm not going to sell Toon Tactics TV, and you sign an agreement with yourself saying that. Well, how useful is that? It's not different, is it? So the challenge is to get these guys to agree with each other. So look, big picture, and this needs to be set in the context of what we saw being reported a couple of weeks ago, right? Because I think you would recall that UEFA published some information, and this, what you're showing on screen, might in fact be coming out of that original UEFA report. I can't really quite see the numbers or the date of what you're showing there, but
it is it's the Athletic. It's from is it from today? Let me see, because it's from the Athletic though. Can you see the
What's the
numbers
number?
here?
That's right. Okay, yep, that is the correct number. So that is the current set of losses. So I think this is a good exhibit to actually show, showing the largest losses in the history of English football. And as well, UEFA had a different view of these numbers. As you know, they don't allow certain transactions like in prior years when we sold the women's team to ourselves. As you will see next year, having sold your stadium to yourself, you all will become very familiar with these tricks. Okay. And
You,
UEFA, and more
your heart must have soared with pride when you saw that.
well, I mean, I've been recommending this to Toon fans for as long as you have been talking, because I keep hearing
That's
Newcastle
true.
fans talking about PSR being a thing, and I'm like, it isn't. Okay, sell something to yourselves, and it goes away just like that overnight. Aston Villa did it, and now you guys have jumped on the bandwagon. So look, UEFA makes adjustments for those things, so it creates a bit of noise as to what's going on. But this number that you're seeing here is the audited number. Right. So this is the financial result for Chelsea Football Club at the club level. And that's important to understand what I mean by club level, because that number does not include expenses at the holding company level. So the corporate structure of these clubs and the holding companies above them allow owners to not include interest costs in these financial results. So that number that you're seeing right there does not include a further 120 million pounds of interest costs that the owners have incurred buying all these players, because all those players were bought with debt. So there's interest costs on that, and the interest cost is being borne at the holding company level. Right, so we're already at 380 million right there. So that also does not include the women's team, which is about 17 million, so not a huge number. But then from what we saw from the UEFA report, Chelsea also owns a club in France called Strasbourg. Strasbourg also incurred a loss of 69 million pounds. So,
Oh my word.
exactly right. So what we're talking about here is another 200 or so, 210 or so million pounds of losses that need to be added to this number that you're seeing here to show you it's crazy. And so and the accounts are not yet out. This is a preview from a statement from the club itself. But I think that when the accounts come out at the holding company level, what we will see is that Chelsea has incurred between 1.5 to 1.6 billion of losses in 4 years since those new owners have been here. And the sad part of this story, I can see the shock on your face. The sad part about this story is that people do not understand private equity structures. So we are owned by a private equity firm, and there's an assumption that all of the assets under management by that private equity firm are available to fund each investment. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Clearlake has $95 billion of assets under management, and Chelsea was pre-funded with the allocation that is available to Chelsea. So there's no going back and trying to see if you can get some of that $95 billion to cover some of these losses. So I anticipate that in the next 2 or 3 years, a lot of this is going to come to a head. If you consider what the owners put in as equity into the structure, including equity funding from a company called Ares, they put in about 3 billion upfront when it was first acquired, and that is eroding at -7% per year. So I want to say that in about 2 to 3 years, the balance sheet of Chelsea will have liabilities at the holding company level, will have liabilities that exceed the value of the total assets.
This sounds worse. Do you remember Burnley? Do you remember Burnley had this kind of when the American owners were leveraging Burnley? I don't know if there was a similar thing with Man United, but this sounds like if you put even tribalism and fan rivalry aside, this sounds. I
It's
can't even
mad.
find the word. It's
Well,
it's.
here's the problem, right? And you're hitting on something that's important for the new football regulator to consider, which is that Chelsea, based on it's not a clear disclosure in prior year financial statements, but my estimate was that they owed about 490, call it £500 million of unpaid transfer fees to other clubs. Now, they also had a receivable for players sold of about $250 million. So that's a net exposure of $250 million of unpaid transfer fees. But you can't really think about it that simply, right? Because the clubs that owe you money from players you sold to them, and the clubs you owe money to from the players you bought, they might not be the same clubs. So it's not just a Chelsea problem. It's a broader European football problem where if Chelsea cannot pay its outstanding transfer fees, these clubs will also have to record losses in their financial statements. So I think the EPL, the new football regulator, all these people are being way too relaxed as to what's taking place here. And unfortunately, they might only act when it's too late. Fans at Chelsea are only now acting now that it's too late and all the money has been spent.
Bobby, if I can just interject quickly, when you say like obviously at the FA and or not FA, the Premier League might be slow to react, but do you think rival clubs are or clubs that are obviously doing business with Chelsea are cutting onto it? Do you think it's possible that they're thinking these guys can actually pay the money for these players that we're selling them?
The smart owners will be looking at this. Right now, I do not think that there is. I think the new regulator has a lot of work to do around governance around football clubs, governance, making sure that they're evaluating risk proactively, and the ability to collect money from other clubs is a risk that boards should be considering. Are they considering that? I'm not sure. I think what needs to happen is that the new regulator has to make sure that they consider it. So in other words, the regulator comes in as they would with a bank or pension administrator and evaluates, well, how are you thinking about risk? How are you managing risk? How are you protecting your balance sheet? It's a conversation that needs to be had.
We've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I've got a few questions in terms of this. And I know you've said this before in the past, but for the folks obviously that haven't seen the shows in the past and whatnot, when you're speaking, Bobby, I'm thinking, so what's the what was the Chelsea's owner's purpose in buying Chelsea? Like if there was like one sentence, because it can't just be because it kind of almost reminds me of this like Wolf of Wall Street situation where someone they're what's it called? They pump and dump a stock. They are they sell a stock that is, they say, oh, it's gonna boom, it's gonna be incredible, but really it's just someone with some faulty gadget in the back of their shed, and they get people to believe in it, and then if they invest all their money, and then whilst they're investing all their money in it, they short the stock, and it crashes, and it takes all the people's money with it. I don't think it's quite the same thing, but I don't understand. I don't understand why the owners at the beginning it feels like they put a lot of money into it, but then
Yeah.
they feel like they've also taken a lot of money out of it. Like, what do they stand to gain from operating and from managing a club in this way?
Sure. So there are a couple pieces to this story, but let's start at a basic level where Bully, the sponsor, if you like, who's currently the chairman, he's been apparently, rumor has it, been sniffing around trying to buy Chelsea from the time that Roman was banned from coming to the UK. So you'd recall that before the Ukraine war, Roman actually could not come to the UK.
Yeah.
Right? So he has got an interest in sports clubs. He has an interest in a number of LA clubs, the Dodgers for sure. And his view is that the current level of profits in sport in the US are not at their full potential, because he believes that there's more profit to be gained once these leagues stream their games as content and collect the revenues directly from subscribers.
Netflix and all of that.
Exactly. So if you think about
Right.
that just as a broad principle, that's why these guys actually own these clubs. And the PIF is not different. And that's what Newcastle fans should also focus on, right? And this is something that irritates me to some extent, because whenever I have a conversation with Chelsea fans, we're about to protest, blue coat out is a single message, which I fully agree with. But here's where I disagree. I do not believe that blue coat out is a sale. I believe that blue coat out is a bankruptcy. And we can get into that in a whole show on a whole show on its own. All right. But when I explain that to people, they tell me, "Oh, some rich Saudi is actually going to just love football and want to blow £5 billion."
Not like this.
Well, I said, there's some rich Saudis that already own a club, and I don't see them blowing £5 billion.
No.
Okay. So,
Not like
this is where the tribalism comes in. Oh, that's just Newcastle. I mean, Chelsea is a better property. I'm like, yeah, whatever, pal. So look, at the end of the day, just like Blake Bowley, the PIF understands the value of that content streaming in the future. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be significant. The question becomes, when is that going to happen? How close are we to that? And I'm not sure when this Sky Sports deal, for example, expires and the various licensing agreements, but that's the timeline that they're on, and speculating about what the value of that streaming will be in terms of cash flows directly from subscribers, right? So that's the big prize that they're paying for, just as a big picture.
Right.
The other thing that would have influenced them, and what people don't understand, is that as much as Roman was a fan of Chelsea and a fan of football, I mean, he almost bought Spurs, so I'm not going to pretend that he came in as a fan of Chelsea, okay? But he became our best fan. But what people don't recognize is that between supporting losses for 19 years and the acquisition price of the club, Roman incurred 1.66-ish billion up in terms of the investment, the capital contributions that he made, right? That was his net outflow, 1.6 billion. And then he sold the club for 2.5 billion, right? So he made about $1 billion of profit. And, that could have been a bigger number because he had sponsored healthcare workers during COVID, for example, out of his own pocket. Those famous hotels that we sold to ourselves, he housed healthcare workers in those, right, during lockdowns, right? And there was obviously no stadium revenue, but he kept things going. So he made a massive sacrifice, which reduced his profit, but he still ended up making just under 3% per annum as a return. People say that Roman was not in this for economic reasons. He actually was. And the way he was spending and investing was not as reckless as it seemed. He believed fundamentally in building a global brand that could then attract commercial revenues, and then which he did, even under forced sale scenarios. So it's not that he voluntarily sold and prepared the club to be sold. He was forced to sell, but he still made $1 billion of profit, right? So he was actually in this still for commercial reasons, and the PIF is as well. So Bowley and those guys would have seen him do that with this asset and say, well, once you add the streaming content to this, it's going to become a much better asset. The problem that Bowley had is that he only had £300 million. So he had to go and collect a ton of money from private equity firms, two buddies of his, to pay Roman the 2.5 billion pounds that he required. But here's the other thing that Roman did before he left. He said, "You got to pay me 2.5 billion in cash, but you are required to put, you as the new owners are required to put 1.7 billion into the club to build a new stadium and for player development."
Right.
These guys agreed to do that, but what do? They firstly, they didn't have the actual money to put the 1.7 in, so they went and borrowed 1.2. Okay, and then they never built the stadium. They just bought a bunch of young players and hoped to flip them later for profit. And in the meanwhile, they've incurred 1.6 billion pounds of losses doing this foolishness. So between the time of what they did for the last 4 years and when this streaming will come online, who funds these losses in the meantime? And actually, quite frankly, I think we need a squad rebuild, because that team, as we can tell, is not fit for purpose. So that was a long story to answer your question, but I hope I did answer it.
It fully answers it, and it makes so much sense. And it's probably even worse than Wolf of Wall Street, Wolf of Wall Street, because it's almost close to Moby Dick, where they're chasing the big prize, which is streaming. They're chasing this big prize, and at some point they want to be able to catch it. They might catch it, but they might die in the process of it. And I don't mean like obviously physically. I mean in some metaphorical sense, right? Do you know what I mean? Because you can't just, because it feels like they are wrecking everything as they're going. Obviously, we've been talking about, you mentioned the squad. You got Enzo Fernandez, who I know we're both not big fans of, to be honest. You got players rebelling against Blueco now. Like, this is what happens when players watch too much YouTube and stuff like that, and they think they're catching trends and stuff like that. When they go on international duties, essentially. And they are, they might not even qualify for Europe if things go on like this. Like you said, on top of that, like, it's a squad rebuild, and then the brand of Chelsea, and if they can't, they don't know. There's no set date. There's no established date when the streaming is going to happen, if it's going to happen, right? So how long can they spend this money for? And whilst they're doing this, they have to pay people their money. You owe all this money for players. You have to pay this money. Like, I'm so curious to see. Let me before we kind of even, because I'm sure you got other stuff that you want to add to it, but this might be in relation to us. So I'll be curious to see how much, for instance, you sell Delap for. Like, if in with all this in mind, how much are you going to sell him for? Are you going to sell him enough for? It's difficult because obviously he didn't have a great season, but there's rumors you want 50 million. Then there's rumors that you want 35 million, which is probably just to cover the book value of the player, right? But like, how is the Chelsea sales going to be this season? Is it going to be a fight? Okay, what do you anticipate for the summer window for Chelsea with all of this in mind? What kind of, in terms of a broad sales and incomings for Chelsea with all of this in mind?
Look, this is like you arriving in Vegas for a week, okay, for 7 nights. Right, for 7 nights, and you blow all of your money in the first 3 days just having fun. Exactly. You've never been to Vegas before. You don't know what you're stepping into. You just get into the casino. All the working girls are hanging off your arms. Okay, the drinks are free, and you're just having a blast. Okay, credit card swiping. Okay, and then by the third night, you're like, shit, I've got 4 more days here, and this is a very expensive city, and everybody is looking to take the shirt off my back. Okay. That's the other thing. I think they fundamentally misunderstood the competitiveness of football, and even at a basic level, right? How many people are there in the world? 6 billion people, right? Let's assume 3 billion of them are women, and half those women play football, right? So we talked about 4.5 billion people who, at some point in their time, saw a round object and started to kick it around. That does not right. That does not apply to baseball, right? The
No.
only people that are doing that are Dominicans and Americans, and maybe some Canadians. Okay, but just by virtue of the universe of people trying to make it in the sport tells you that the competition is different. The other thing to consider is that they can't get their heads around relegation. Relegation
No.
is something, and Spurs must be scaring the shit out of them, right? Because at least Spurs has a hard asset in a stadium, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys are just a brand and a bunch of player contracts. That's all Chelsea is. They don't even own the pitch, right? So they did not understand what they were getting into. They've blown the money. They over relied on data, right? Assuming, look, when you buy this player, all these players are going to just grow together and player development is linear, right? It isn't. And we who
No.
observe football forever know that. We've seen how many 18-year-olds who are done by 22, right? And playing for Sevilla or something in Spain, right? Right. So this is the situation they find themselves in. They really don't understand it. And I think UEFA kind of did them a favor by imposing sanctions, making them a buy to sell club, because financially they had to be buy to sell. So they can use UEFA as an excuse, but they simply do not have the capital right now. Using your example of a Delap, those days of buying players and selling them at the accounting book value are over. If you look at the number of transfers into Chelsea, where just like you buy any other asset, like a stock, where you have to buy high, you have to buy low and sell high. So, with the exception of Madueke and maybe one or two others, every player that Chelsea has been buying, they have been selling them at less than what they bought them.
Yeah.
That has to catch up, right? And so for Delap has to stay put until we get more than £35 million for it, right?
How much you expecting? How much they'll get?
I don't know. I think he'll stay put. I'll go to Strasbourg. They can't sell him for less than they bought him for. I think they bought him for 35 or 30 million pounds. I can't recall.
So if Newcastle said we'll give you 35, 40 million. 40
Listen,
million.
our weighted average cost of capital is 10% per annum. Okay, so just to pay back our investors, it has to be 35 million pounds plus 10% for the year that he was here for this to make sense. Okay. And if he stays for another year, add another 10%. This kind of making book profits, that's bollocks. That's for PSR. Who cares about that when you're selling assets to yourself, right? So PSR is not an issue. It is now a return on investment issue.
That's the problem.
And all of the investment that has been made, 1.2 billion, has been done into player contracts. And
so
therefore,
if I add to your earlier knowledge about Vegas, you're having fun, people are taking the shirt off your back, but then the mafia turn up and say, hey, you need to, all that money that you borrowed to have in Vegas, you need to start paying us. You need to start paying us back. Otherwise, they'll start taking the digits off your hands. Essentially.
Well, the mafia that they borrowed money from is a company called Ares. And if anybody who's listening does a Google right now, they'll find out that Ares investors are asking for their money back. So Chelsea needs more money from its creditors. Its creditors want their money back to pay back their investors because of what's going on in the markets right now. Right? The entire private equity space is in absolute turmoil. Some funds are preventing investors from getting their deposits back. So it's not a great environment to have owners who exist off of borrowing money, particularly when they've created a monstrosity that's losing 7% every year.
This is wow. I'm lost for words. So I'm going to throw a few comments to you before we move on, but this is worse than I thought. James says, isn't it going to be a huge thing for you? You have players leaving with money to still pay off. Drop off lots from a sell-able player. I'm not from a sellable player. Drop off lots from a sellable player. I think it is. I don't know if you get that, Bobby.
I don't, but look, it kind of doesn't really matter if we owe them money. If a player wants to leave, we'll sell him, and the proceeds will need to go to pay off whatever is owed on the player. All right, so it's not that's not really what I'm concerned about. It's the long term, constantly buying high and selling low over time that catches up with you.
Because you're not going to get money back for Gittins. You're not going to get money back.
I don't think so.
For Garnacho, who's going mad on the social media, you know. Obviously, we talked about Delap. I don't know who else you're going to. You have to sell Cole Palmer.
I didn't answer that question. What do I expect to happen this summer? I expect right now, based on the noise in the media, I mean, Enzo Fernandez has to go. So, yeah. I mean, I don't even understand how that continues. Cucurella is interesting. His comments were the truth, right? And these fans, and he's not disrespecting the club.
What did he say? What did he say? Do you know what he said?
Well, he basically came out, but some people are interpreting this as support for Maresca. He actually never supported Maresca. All he said was the timing of the change. He gave the impression that Maresca was sacked. And I mean, Maresca resigned because he asked for something reasonable and didn't get it, right? So you might as well consider that a sacking. But he said the change should not have happened. It was disruptive. He was saying that, Rossignol doesn't have time to implement his methods, which is a kind way of saying he doesn't know what he's doing. But he went into detail about the lack of experience, the 8-2 hammering against PSG, how demoralizing that is for him personally, and that if Barcelona had to come in, he would have to consider the offer. So it was a very measured statement that he made, but it was still very, very devastating to the ownership. But let me get back to what I expect this summer. I keep not answering this question. So I think he's going to go. And this is something that I've been bleating about in your chat, right? And there was an article about how Isak used the Article 17 to his advantage. Isak left in August because that was the 3-year anniversary of his contract at Newcastle. He was entitled under Article 17 to rip that contract up, and Newcastle then be forced to go and get compensation for him, right? That applies to all of the Chelsea players. So the ones that are actually mouthing off are the ones who have spent 3 years there. Now, Cucurella had a contract extension. He didn't have a contract extension, but he amended, he negotiated a new contract to be paid more, but it was never extended. Mm-hmm. Palmer's 3-year anniversary, he did have an extension 2 years ago, so he probably cannot leave until the following year. But Enzo Fernandez, he just reached 3 years in January, so that's why he's doing what he's doing, right? but a number of them have reached 3 years. Their agents understand how the Article 17 works. They saw Isak do it, and they all know they can leave. The problem that Blue Call has is that they never anticipated FIFA changing the rules when they put these long contracts in place. So effectively, if players can walk out after 3 years, what's the point of a 9-year contract?
What's the point of a 9-year contract?
All you're doing is guaranteeing a player a wage for 9 years if he gets injured or not. So basically, it's a terrible agreement with an embedded option in favor of the player and exposes the club. And that is the next leg of the project at Chelsea to blow up. And people aren't paying attention to it. All of those contracts have unpriced options in them for players. And Bluco does not yet understand that. And they'll find that out this summer. So I expect the ones who want to go will leave this summer. Whatever proceeds are received will be used to cover losses. And we'll be getting all of our players from Strasbourg because they have 50 kids out there waiting to come to Chelsea.
I was just going on transfer.com to see who's left, who's got 3 years left. I'm trying to remember, where did I go? Was it absences, experience, end of contract? Well, it might just show me the exact contract. Okay, so you haven't got any end of contract in 20.
But
So
Philip,
what is
you don't even need to do that, right? Think
Right.
about the folly of buying players all the same age and presenting the story of them all growing together. Guess what? They're all going to hit 3 years around the same time. You're screwed.
You're in trouble.
Finished.
So you've got, Kukureya so this is 2028. Kukureya, Chalobah loves you guys. Adebayo, I don't know who the other guys are, so they don't really matter.
It's about when they
2029.
signed. It's not when they expire, right? So it's when they
Oh,
signed.
when they signed. Okay. Then I
You
won't
have to
do that then.
count 3 years from when they signed or renewed.
Right. Okay. All right. A couple more questions, and then before we get on to Newcastle, Lion Point, big up to yourself. God bless you. So big ups. I swear, sooner or later, the Premier League is gonna end up like the Serie A. I just can't prove it yet. I don't know if that's in reference to like some of the obviously the state of it's the Italian league, the recent reports about the toxic nature of like money and kind of agent fees, and how the treatment of academy players. It's a possibility, but for me, I think going back to what Bobby said earlier about the Premier League being so competitive, and part of the reason why it's so competitive is that I feel like there's different types of ownership. We're going to talk about Newcastle's in a moment, and I think people do want to win in a different way. Where it feels like what's happened in Italy just seems like it's just about money. It's just about cutthroat business, really. I don't know.
I mean, look, when you look back at the last 4 decades of football, right, you have to remember that Italian football was only as strong as it was in the 90s because of the ban on English football, because of the hooliganism, etc., right? Because remember, I think I don't know how long they were banned from Europe for, but English clubs were banned from Europe for a considerable period. And therefore, the UK was not, English clubs were not able to attract the best players. The Italian league then attracted the best players and therefore got the best viewership.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Right. But at the end of the day, in terms of markets that have money to spend, it's English-speaking markets, and most non-English speaking markets get English-speaking content, right? So at the end of the day, nobody's speaking Italian, and so nobody's going back to that. Well, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful to Italians, but just purely looking at just the numbers, right? So I don't see that as happening. I think the money will, as long as the money continues to flow, the EPL will buy the best players.
A few folks just want to confirm the spelling of Aries or Aries. The
ARES, Aries Management.
Oh, like the War of God. No, the God of War. The God of War.
The guys that just foreclosed on John Textor, made him sell his Crystal Palace holding.
Jeez, they are the mafia. They are the mafia.
The loan that they gave to Bully and those boys is the exact same structured loan as they gave to John Textor and Leon.
Jeez Louise. James says, I always disagree with clubs that feel a good idea to give people contracts for over 10 years in some cases of Chelsea players. Yeah, so he's kind of agreeing with you yourself, Bobby. James says Serie A used to be one of the most powerful leagues until the mafia links came out. I somehow think it's still involved today. And yeah, just confirming another. Just says thank you for confirming the spelling of Aries. Aries or Aries. I just know Aries, the god of war. That's why I just said. That's why I said Aries.
Yeah, that's what it's named after.
That's what it's named after. Okay. Well, folks, you heard it here. It's. I didn't expect it. I didn't like. I feel like it sounds crazy, but I feel like it's like I feel sad. I feel I'm on a downer after hearing that. Like it's like well, how do you even? What's the way out? Like it's insane. So
There are going to be case studies on this in business schools and
yes,
sports management schools. It's crazy what's gone down here, and people are only now waking up now that it's too late.
I feel like my thumbnail is apt because
Sure.
I did it for a joke because I got there's part of the inspiration from the film Margin Call. I didn't watch it, but I've seen clips of it. I'm actually going to watch it soon. But I'm like, this feels like Margin, but it's actually turned out to be that way. It's anyway, like you said, there's going to be case studies on this. There is going to be case studies on this. All right, so folks, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about Newcastle, but feel free to continue asking questions of Bobby around anything around Chelsea, finances, mafia, cowboy links, and all this other stuff. This is what all the show is about. But you've been absolutely phenomenal, folks. All right. So I forgot which we're going to do this. We're going to do Newcastle finances first and then Eddie, isn't
Let's
it?
talk
We're going to
about
do finances.
Eddie. Yeah, let's end on a good note. I'm not sure that the news about Eddie is that positive right now. So let's, let's do Eddie.
All right, so let me lay the groundworks and everything else. There's a couple things about Eddie really, and we're actually also. Let me make sure I got it here because I did put it on my thing. Let me make sure I've got it all. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, no. Oh, here we go. Okay, just put it on a different slide. Okay, let's a couple things. Let me lay the groundwork for folks. So, a couple news about Eddie. We're going to talk about. We talked about him a little bit last week, but there's been some fresh news. One is a post from a gentleman called Awad. I'm not fully sure who he is. I think he's a journalist. And I'm not fully sure where he posted this, but it seems like he has posted this or said it. He's got 1.3 million viewers. And his word is that talk has come back strong. This is from the PIF, he's saying. Talk has come back strong. He said it today. In the last few hours about Eddie Howe's future, and there's near confirmation that he will depart. Just as that he will depart, that's the season. Just as there's conviction that Tonali will leave too, which I don't know why people. Maybe it's the stages of grief for people, but for me, I'm like ready to go. Anybody who's been watching the shows, I'm ready to go. All of this stuff. But anyway, if these reports turn out true, then we're facing a summer of comprehensive change at Newcastle. And hang on to that thought, and especially on the idea of comprehensive change, because article today from Mark Douglas, who folks know I follow quite well, very balanced views, a lot of connections to Newcastle, but obviously he released an article today. Now, this part of the article is, I think, his opinions, but I think they're based on what's happening and the changes that are happening at Newcastle, and it kind of parts of it also tie into what this gentleman Awad said, journalist said in regards to changes and being comprehensive change, and it reads, "Will it affect Howe's future?" This is towards the end of the article where he talks about, how much money probably is available to Newcastle, which we're going to talk about on this show, the players they're going to have to sell, how many, all these other things, and then and where it seems to lead to is that there's probably even more players that need to be sold than people anticipate. And I was actually going to do a show at some point where because I had Dan Burn in mind, because I was thinking we're linked to so many left centre backs. I'm thinking, are we going to keep Dan Burn? If they have to sell Dan Burn, then. And I was thinking, if they're going to sell Dan Burn, then how about Jacob Murphy? Because that means we've gone from 8 to 10. Like, how many are we? These are all of Eddie Howe's lieutenants. Anyway, speaking of change, so Mark Douglas says, given the latest finances, last summer's spending feels even stranger. Spending 55 million on Wissa was almost incomprehensible given how long he will be part of the squad costs. They cannot continue in that vein. Hopkinson, that's obviously Newcastle CEO, equivocal backing of Eddie Howe opens up the possibility there may be change in the dugout too. It is unthinkable in some ways. He, being Eddie Howe, has overseen a period of huge success, but does he have the desire to absorb more star players leaving and a pivot to a different type of incoming? The idea being that Newcastle are looking to really like buy most of their players from abroad. Might Howe have to take himself? Might Howe himself take a look at the next part of the project and the growing sense of unease in the fan base and decide to look elsewhere? I have to just say at the end, it says sources insist he is seen as part of the solution. So I have to put that in. It is important. Sources say that he is seen as part of the solution. So that first part was Mark Douglas's point of view. And so I want to keep those things in mind, and we're going to move on a little bit later in terms of obviously Eddie Howe, how he's been doing the team of the squad. Bobby, and this is why it's really good to have you on the show. It's rival fan, objective view, haven't got the kind of emotional attachment like I might have, and obviously other fellow Toon fans. It doesn't mean it can't be objective, but slightly less objective, obviously, than someone who's outside of it. We've been having back and forths about Eddie Howe and everything else. What's your the tide appears to be it's somewhere 50-50, but it's difficult to tell for me to tell which way it's shifting. And there's a lot of mitigating circumstances in terms of how the season and why the season has gone the way it has gone, but also in terms of the mixed results of the season. We've had good cup runs. We've seen the top 16, the last 16 of the Champions League, which we've never seen before. We reached yet another semi-final in the League Cup. We did lose in the fifth round of the FA Cup, but it was to Man City. We currently have 7 games to go where we could still reach Europe, but we have lost to Sunderland twice. We topped the league for 22 for points lost from winning positions, which is 22 points. We've been whooped by Barcelona, I think 7-2 or something like that in one game, and then followed up by a Derby Day defeat by Sunderland. On top of that, and maybe the wider picture, and obviously Mark Douglas has talked about it, myself, when I'm kind of looking at, finances and everything else, and the amount of changes we're going to have, and maybe the players that we have to sell in order to bring in, I'm thinking constantly, like, this is a huge turnover. And if you look at our sporting director, Mr. Wilson, he's used to having huge turnovers. If you remember, I think Nottingham Forest, he was in charge of last summer last summer or the summer before that, the summer before, where they first came into the league, he brought in 20 players, right? So player turnover is not a problem to him. I think it'll be a problem to Eddie Howe. How are you seeing things? And obviously, we're going to bring up your table in a moment. You've the table from scratch. How are you seeing for Eddie Howe, for Newcastle, from a wider spectrum? What's it like for you from the outside looking in?
Well, I mean, you described the feeling among fans as being 50-50. I'm beginning to think that you were a bit of an outlier.
Right.
I've been I've been listening to quite a bit of content from, because I usually have YouTube on in the background as I'm working instead of a radio. You know what I mean? That old school way.
I stand
Look,
alone.
yeah. Look, here's the challenge, right? I came into this season with an expectation as to what Eddie Howe was going to do. And unfortunately, he met that expectation because I had profiled him before based on the prior 2 seasons, prior 3 seasons, if you like, because I think he's been there. He's been there for 4 years, right? At this point.
This is the 5th year. This is the 5th year.
Fair enough. So I saw him qualify for the Champions League first. I saw him. Well, let's start with the actual table first, Philip, as an exhibit. But I had a view that Eddie Howe he concentrates on the trophy that he feels he can get the most mileage with, right? And he seems to have a challenge balancing multiple competitions at once. That was the feeling I had coming into this season, and unfortunately, he didn't beat the charge. The season went exactly as I expected it to, where he would concentrate on the Champions League and neglect the domestic competition. I think generally that news report that you're seeing there is being a bit kind. I believe that there needs to be accountability for this season. I'm just looking back at his last 3 seasons, and there's nothing that I've seen that suggests that he can take you to the next level. And that is why I've made the conclusions that I have. But then he has the particular characteristic of not being able to battle on multiple fronts. And I don't think that's a rush judgment because we've seen it for 3 or 4 seasons at this point. But then to corroborate that, we can dive into the data. But I'm sure you want to react to what I just said to defend your boy. So I will give you the opportunity to do
that. Probably on a couple fronts. One is on the idea of in terms of incapable of qualifying for the Champions League. I think, or no, not qualifying for the Champions League, for not maintaining form in the Champions League or battling on multiple fronts, essentially. We have a small squad. We have in terms of quality compared to the other teams. And I think that has to be kept in mind.
That is a factor. Agreed.
Yeah, it's a huge factor. And we've had 18 months and 3 transfer windows where we didn't buy a first team player. There isn't, and yet we still won a trophy and qualify for the Champions League. I can't name one manager at this moment in time who's achieved the same feat, especially in the Premier League era at this time. So in terms of moving on to what levels he can reach, I think I don't know what we know. I don't think we have a ceiling. You have to remember this, and I'll end it on this, I guess. The plan for this summer was to have Trafford and João Pedro in the first couple of weeks, but our sporting director did the runner. The plan then was around Isak, was to sort out the situation with Isak, sell him or go.
Sorry, are Toon fans now admitting that was handled poorly and that he should have been sold at the beginning of the summer? Like, is that the general consensus now?
I think when you're going through it at the time, I think that the consensus is that obviously hindsight is 2020 vision, isn't it? We should have sold him and got Ekatike. I think we were trying to do that. At the time, it wasn't there's so many reasons why it didn't happen the way it should have happened. Partly because of Isak, his agent, but also Liverpool not directly approaching Newcastle, but going via the media. But yes, I think if you look at this season, I think the constant conversations in reference back to, we don't want the Tonali situation to be like Isak. We don't want the Gordon to be situation like Isak. So you can see that yes, there must be a lesson learned there where they're saying we don't want another Isak. We want to deal with it proactively. So I think there is an acknowledgement of that, and they're actually doing that with Bruno and Tonali. You would have witnessed how they've handled that pretty well in my opinion. So Eddie Howe would have had Japed and Trafford in, dealt with the Isak situation and got Ekatike in. And that would have been the three players, at least in terms of upgrades, coming into the season. What's Newcastle's biggest problem in terms of compared to last season? We don't have a goal scoring 9. That goal scoring 9 changes everything for Newcastle. And it's not Eddie's Howe to be sporting director. He's been sporting director for the last, by default, Grab pulled into it for the past 2 summers. The first summer, because Dan Ashworth betrayed the club and was talking to Man United whilst having access to our scouting programs. And then the second summer where Mr. Paul Mitchell did the runner 24 hours before the transfer window opened. So he's managing the job of a sporting director whilst being a manager and doing all these things to get players in. And I think that's taken its toll. It doesn't excuse all the things that's happened on the pitch. Like, it's in my point of view that I think there's at least 8 to 11 points that we should be better off. And I think your table's going to probably add some of that. So I guess just in a roundabout way, I'm going to say this. Directly to answer what you're saying is, I'm not convinced. I don't think we have seen Eddie's Howe's level. I don't think he's been given the support to reach his level. I don't think, and I don't believe, that there is many managers who could do better than him, than what he's done under those circumstances. And even those that can, I don't think they can do much better. I think they can do 8 to 11 points better. That's just me. But I don't think they can do that much better. Let me know what you think about that, Bobby, and we'll get to your table as well.
I agree with Adrian Pickett. And I'll tell you, I think okay. And I will be here all day. Like, I understand the emotional attachment, okay. And look, the stories around the sporting director and various things, there isn't one person that's going to hold the blame for last summer, right? But at the end of the day, I think Eddie was part of the attempt to hold on to Isak, which was a failure to understand FIFA's rules. As soon as Isak said he wanted to go, he should have been granted the permission to leave, and you would have had the budget to spend during the summer. And you would have been able to plan more carefully. But I feel like there was this naive attempt to hold on to the player when there was actually no basis to be able to hold on to him. And if that acceptance had happened earlier, you would have been able to plan the summer better. But again, the sporting director leaving and all this kind of thing would have had an impact. I think prospectively, hopefully the club is not trying to hold on to Bruno and to Tonali if they want to leave. If they want to leave, here's the door. Let's set up a process. Let's get the highest bid, because we need to get on with our business of moving forward.
That's been done.
Yeah. So I think that's, and by the way, these guys might not get the offers that they expect either. So they might come crawling back asking to stay. Because, what Enzo Fernandez is doing right now, for example, it is highly likely in my mind that he's not going to be going to Real Madrid, and he's going to be like Jackson, sitting in no man's land. Okay.
Yeah.
But let's leave that aside. Look, just getting back to Eddie very quickly. Can you bring up the table itself?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think your audience is somewhat familiar. I just do this for fun, right? And what I tried to do was to come up with a metric that I know that Philip, you're XG focused and you understand those metrics very well. You actually taught me a lot about XG, believe it or not, from following this channel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
You introduced me to this stuff. And then what I wanted to understand was how betting markets use their predictions. And they combine XG and goal difference to do predictions. And that's why I came up, I tested this table to say, what is most predictive if I combined goal difference and expected goal difference, right? So that's just all this table is showing. That net XG with the little asterisk next to it is a combination of expected goal difference and actual goal difference in a ratio of 2 to 1. And what this actually shows is that Newcastle should be 4 places higher in the table. So you should be ahead of Sunderland, who should actually be close to
Relegation. It should be
Exactly.
relegation. It should
Right?
be.
They've gotten quite lucky from time to time. And look, I'm still going through that theoretical challenge within my mind about whether or not, look, what Aston Villa and what Sunderland have been doing all season, you'll see that I have Aston Villa should be in 12th place, right? So apart from Morgan Rogers scoring low probability goals, they should be in the bottom half of the table, right? Likewise, Eddie Howe's strikers are running hot and cold. He is coaching them in a way that they should be producing more. He's putting them in the correct positions on the pitch. We're giving credit in this table for actual goals scored. So my estimate is that he should be in 8th place. Now, if you go to my next exhibit, and this is something that I had actually done just out of curiosity before the Sunderland game, what I did was to say, well, if I look at the trajectory of where these two teams have been in my table, like literally plotting from my table where they were in each game week in the table. Okay, so that's right. This is the trend of their net XG per my calculation.
Right.
And the problem is that this confirms what I've always been thinking. As Eddie Howe got deeper into the Champions League and continued to focus on that, you can see the level of underlying performance of the team has been on a downward trend since I started doing this table in game week 13.
Right.
And then Sunderland, their underlying performance has actually been improving over time. So it did not surprise me that the result happened the way it did. And that's why I was in Mitch's chat. The last time he was on the show, I referenced my prediction. I said to him, listen, I'll bet you that Sunderland finishes above Newcastle in the table. But if you get past Barcelona, you're actually going to win the Champions League. Because I knew that Eddie was focused on that. And his biggest hurdle was going to be Barcelona. The problem is he didn't do what Chelsea did in 2012, which would be to go and take, so it happened the way it did. But the problem here is the general trend, right, Philip? Now that the Champions League is out of the way, Eddie, as usual, he can double down on one particular thing, focus, and I expect that this trend will be reversed for the rest of the season. So hopefully we should, hopefully over the next 7 games or so, we should see an upward trend in this.
If you were to predict that next 7 games and like 21 points from what you've done on the table and Newcastle's performances, obviously the main team are playing away is Arsenal. Everybody else is not at the moment, but generally are below us. If you were to predict based on your seeing next year table, the team's performances, Eddie one game a week. Out of 21 points, how many do you think Eddie Howe can get?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pulling up your fixtures here very quickly. Newcastle, just to see who you're playing in the Premier League. So I think your fixtures look pretty decent. I think it's only Arsenal that's the one that you might say, look, you'll definitely drop points there, right?
Unless they're still in the Champions League and they've won the Premier League by then.
Yeah, I think they have enough depth anyway, and I don't think
They do.
all right. They like the team itself in attack is pretty mediocre, but you've got like coming off the bench in enough positions that's actually not going to worry me. Arsenal to me is more of a league team than it is a cup team. So I don't expect them to win the Champions League. And the way they shit the bed there in the Carabao Cup confirms that. But yeah, look, I expect Nocturne. Eddie needs to finish strong. There's an opportunity to finish strong given the fixtures that he has here. But I don't think that's going to be enough to save him. That's not going to change my view as to whether or not he's the guy. Looking back on the last 4 years, is he the guy? He's going to pick up cups for you, but is he the guy that's going to consistently get you top 5 and in the knockout rounds of the Champions League every year? I'm not seeing enough that's going to persuade me about that. And by the way, because there's some positive news that we'll turn to shortly. So there's an opportunity to really do a reset across the board, I think. And that's why these news reports about what might be coming for him, I think are credible.
So
somebody has to pay the price.
How many points out of 21?
Look, I want to say, look, I can see him easily picking up a good 15 points, to be honest.
I had it 16. So fair
I
enough.
can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. And then that takes you to what? That takes you to how much?
58, I think. Something like 58.
So, look, 58 is where I think is the minimum cutoff. I think that's what Chelsea is going to get to. So I think, or could get to, before all this crisis with the team. So I think 58 is a good target. Liverpool could end up on 58, so it could be 3 teams trying to get that 5th place.
Liverpool? Do you think Liverpool will get 58?
They could do.
But your table's quite favourable for them, though. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean they're doing pretty decent in terms of the productivity. They're right around where they should be.
5th.
I got them at 5th. Yeah, I got them at 5th. So they're right around where I think they'll finish at the end of the season. But I expect that they're probably going to get to 58, 59 points. I don't see Chelsea getting more than 58 points.
Sorry, go on.
And I guess your optimistic scenario is that Newcastle will land there as well.
Last year, nobody got 58 points. It's crazy. Because last year, Bournemouth finished in 9th with 56 points. Brighton finished in 8th with 61 points. So that kind of puts Newcastle somewhere between 8. If you looked at last year, that puts Newcastle somewhere between 8th and 9th. But last year, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Chelsea, Newcastle in the top 5. And Aston Villa 6th. Obviously, Forest at the moment are fighting, who finished 7th, are fighting relegation. So it's what is it this year? We've got, let me show you what I'm looking at so you guys can see.
I'll just go on while you do that for a minute, Phillips. So you just carry on.
Yeah, no problem. Let me share it with you guys. Where is it? Here we go. Share Premier League season. So bearing in mind, guys, last year's 58 points. This is this year. The same teams more or less are around the 5th spot, apart from Brentford replaced Nottingham Forest in 7th. And obviously, I think Villa replaced Newcastle. So between Newcastle, you can see here. Can you guys see that? Yeah, you can. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Where's Newcastle? Newcastle currently in 12th. Me and Bobby are predicting either 58 to 59 points. Last year, that would have given them 8 or 9 finishes. This year is probably a little bit more tighter, if you were to say it. Liverpool are on 49th. Bobby might be right about the 58 points, but I'd be so surprised if Liverpool only got another 9 points in 7 games. That would be horrific for Liverpool. But look at then Chelsea's. So Newcastle are currently 7 points behind Liverpool, 6 points behind Chelsea, who are both in 5th and 6th, and 4 points behind Brentford. Right? And this is where I think Bobby and others, not necessarily Bobby, but everyone, this is where, and I think I've said it on the show before, Brentford drew the last 3 games, by the way. If you're the owners, right, and you're looking at this, you're saying, okay, Chelsea, Liverpool might be it's probably a hard ask to, despite all their troubles. But if we can't catch up to Brentford, who we spent more money than in the last 7 games and no Champions League, it will be despite all the mitigating circumstances that I gave, and obviously got a very small violin for, it is going to be very hard to justify Eddie Howe's position. So I think that's why they're saying you got to get some form of Europe. Okay, so let's go to the questions before we look at the finances and hopefully some bright news come along. Ches says, I think it's shifting. This is the conversation we had about where Toon fans are with Eddie. Ches says, I think it's shifting towards Eddie Howe out by the polls I've seen. Most are about 67% out. You know where I stand. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I do, Ches. Lion Point says, I think Hopkinson, as our CEO, already made up his mind about sacking Eddie, but he doesn't want to create a panic among the fan bases. That's how I interpret his recent statements. I don't think Hopkinson is in the position where he himself, and I think I said it in my last show, he cannot, I don't think he can sack Eddie Howe himself. I think it's a joint board decision within the boardroom. In terms of Eddie Howe, obviously he has a say, but by himself he can't. He doesn't have the experience either in terms of footballing experience inside in footballing management to do that. But I see where you're coming from there. James says, just again, I've been asked about 50 to 50. Just again, I've been asked 50-50 myself, but it's up to the club to do the right thing for the team and for the fan base. We're not a fan on club. That's why I don't want to get involved in the situations. It's 50-50 for James there. That's a fair start. Small violin for me. Ches says, agreed, Philip. Oh, by the way, folks, please do like, share, and subscribe, as I'm sure you guys are doing. Ches says, agreed, Philip. Mitigating factors doesn't excuse Eddie everything, but he deserves a chance to show what he can do with the full support of a functioning club behind him. That's my sentiments exactly. Big up Kaz. God bless you. I don't know if this is Kaz from Never a Foul Kaz. If it is, do let me know. If it's not, do let me know, whoever it is. But big up to yourself and God bless you. Kaz says, the fact that Eddie signed Elanga, who's a runner, shows that there was no plan to evolve as a team and look to dominate games. Okay, but then if we're going to do that, then there was a plan to sign João Pedro. That's evolving as a team. There was a plan to sign Ekatike. That's evolving the team. There was a plan to sign Sheshko, Trafford. All those players evolve Newcastle. You can't just look at the players we did sign because we know that we signed certain. I know Elanga we planned for. That's why I haven't mentioned him. But there's also players that we really, really wanted to get, but we didn't. And I think those players would have evolved Newcastle and helped us. Connor says, Philip, what's your thoughts on Voldemada's comments in German media? I caught part of it. I don't know. Let me know specifically which ones you're talking about. But Voldemada basically said, people are judging me now for me playing as a midfielder, like giving me judging me based on as a striker, but I'm playing in midfield, so you should be judging me on I think how I secure space and win duels, which he's doing okay at, but not great. Not great at all. So if he wants that judgment, I'll give it to him. I don't know if people have noticed that I've been having a lot of back and forths with people over Voltamada as well. I know Bobby, like obviously, I don't know if you're I don't know if I go as far as say you're a fan, but I know obviously you like his conversion rates and everything else in terms of Voltamada. You're quite impressed with that. Adrian says Real Madrid need Enzo like I need a Sunderland.
Top notch, Adrian. Top notch, my man. You're right. Absolutely right.
You're absolutely right, Adrian. Kaz says Eddie has taken NUFC as far as he can. Let's not have blinkers on. Eddie got 5 years, which is more than majority of managers. He is not the one who would take NUFC next level. Yet he has taken NUFC next level. When he took NUFC, we were second from bottom in the Premier League. He's given us 2 Champions League, a Premier League, and multiple finals and semi-finals. I don't know.
Kaz, I'm 100% with you, mate. There needs to be accountability. he's been given more than enough time, and we've seen him for what he is.
I don't know what more. I don't know what more you can give you guys. Champions League Cup. I don't know. Kaz says teams. I thought you were going to say Langer again. I was like, geez. Teams of Europe midweek fixtures need to play a slow possession-based football. If the squad isn't big, 55 plus games with this intensity will lead to injuries and fatigue. True, it's very difficult to play possession-based football, even when you try. Man City have had difficulties. Just taking Rodri away ruined their season. So, there's I think rather than the word slow, I'll say controlled. I think the word slow has put me off a little bit. Ches says it's not about having blinkers on. Big up Ches. When he's done better than expected in 4 out of 5 seasons, it's blinkers to make rash decisions based on one poor season with mitigating factors. 100%. Connor says, what people don't realize is Howe is not a young manager. He's not old though. Jeez, he is 9 years. He's a 9-year veteran Premier League manager and shouldn't be making so many in-game management mistakes. I don't disagree with the in-game management mistakes. I would also say he's been manager and sporting director for the last 2 summers. I think that will affect anybody. Ches says Mbeumo was a real target, but Newcastle were priced out on wages early, so we didn't bid. Exactly. He was. And he wanted Man United. Kaz says, James, we never bid for Mbeumo, mate. We didn't bid because we were priced out. Just rumors from Luke Edwards. No, we were very interested in Mbeumo. Just not when the price came up. Ches says there's no way to know who Eddie's first choice was. Neither Newcastle nor the club have put out a statement indicating that choice. It's all guesswork and agendas without knowing for sure. I think it's the players that we bid for and got rejected. Like it was that I think because a lot of people erased the pain and shame and embarrassment of the last transfer window because we got rejected like very publicly. But João Pedro, Ekatike, Benjamin Šeško, James Trafford are the 4 I can really name. Delap actually as well, and Liam Delap. We lost twice to Chelsea looking for players. Connor says, I think we will get a maximum 10 points now. Wow. So Connor's even lower. Raymond says, and we are going to get some good news in a moment. Bobby has some good news for us. Raymond says, hi to Philip. After the loss to Sunderland, David Hopkinson should be relieved. should relieve Eddie from his duties as a manager of Eddie Howe side from Newcastle now. Big up to you, Raymond. God bless you. He says, hi, Toon Philip. How are you? Okay. So this is a good
Come on,
question
Ray.
for
No.
I'm going to finish this question. Raymond says, "Hi to Philip. How are you on Maresca appointed as manager of Newcastle? So there's rumors. And thank you for bringing it up, Raymond. There are strong. Well, I'm going to say strong rumors. I'm not going to go that far, but there's rumors. There's a whisper. There's a something in the air about Maresca possibly being appointed in Eddie's stead. How do you guys feel about that, Bobby?" Mr. Fairview,
Sure.
you've had a full-on experience of Mr. Maresca.
Hated
How do
every
you
minute of it. But let's go.
Okay.
No, but look, I mean, look, I just to react. I mean, people really need to pay attention to Maresca's record. Okay, Maresca signed off on £500 million of transfers. He has no excuses. This centre back conversation to me is just ridiculous. He had veto over players, is my understanding, because he has a say. And if he says he absolutely doesn't want a player, I have to assume that they're not going to get that player for him. And even if he were to be that kind of manager, that's not who you need at Newcastle. Okay. Maresca had a 49% win rate in the league. People got confused with the Conference League, where we were happy to field the kids. Okay.
Right.
And they include that in his win percentage. Take out those numbers, and he's one of the worst managers at Chelsea in the Premier League era. Okay, I think only Poch and Potter were worse. All right. Then you look at the fundamentals of his play. Okay, Maresca was in a top 10 race before he left. He was always gonna leave. But he left when his stock was on the way down. He saw that fixture list and knew that he was not good enough to get us through that fixture list. And he left when he had a basic amount of credibility coming out of that vacation cup in the summer. So I take no pride in that Club World Cup. I think the Conference League is a disgrace. I mean, Spurs wouldn't even play in that damn competition, but we somehow walk around with that trophy like if it's a badge. It's embarrassing. Okay, the man's metrics are horrific. Believe it or not, Rossini has more points per game than Maresca. That man dropped 8 points. When you look at the equivalent fixtures last year, right, consider the promoted teams and the relegated teams and look at who we got points from last year. Maresca dropped 8 of the 11 points that have us behind where we were last year. You do not want this man at Newcastle. Study the numbers carefully, ignore the Conference League, and his record is abysmal.
So that's a no from Bobby, I think.
A strong recommendation to Newcastle. Okay, stay far away.
Do you know? It'd be so funny if we hired this guy. I can just imagine the show we're gonna have with Bobby on this. Kaz says, "What's best for Newcastle?" And I'm gonna stop in about a minute because I want to get onto this thing. But Kaz says, "What's best for NUFC is that we part ways with Ed. In my opinion, his brand of football is not compatible with the hectic schedule, especially as he wants to go far in both domestic cups." James says, "I want in the later stages, like next season, with Altamar return to be a striker, maybe as a backup or maybe as a first team player."
Can I actually just react to that? And I actually feel a lot more better about Eddie now that I see that Maresca is the alternative. Maybe you should keep Eddie, but let's talk about that style of play, okay? And here's why I was so disappointed in the Barcelona result. What the style of play that Eddie has is very comparable to the style of play Chelsea had under Roman. Okay, if you think about our football, we weren't doing this possession-based bollocks.
Or the flying
until
fullbacks, the flying fullbacks.
yeah, of course, right, right, right. You go back through the history of how we go and beat, like Barcelona hated to play against us. If we brought that Maresca ball, okay, in those latter stages of the competition, now we did beat them at Stamford Bridge, but not playing Maresca ball. Maresca, whenever he had a big game, reverted to our baseline, which is the style of play that Eddie has. That is actually the most successful style of play in the Champions League. This is why Pep does not survive in the Champions League. He does. His record is abysmal. So I know fans are gravitating to this technical possession-based stuff, but this is not the way to win trophies. You can win leagues that way because it's a sustainable way to play. Players, I presume, get fewer injuries because of the reduced intensity. But I don't have a problem with Eddie's style of play. I think his problem is that he's not managing it. He doesn't have the squad size, to your point. But even if he did, I don't think I don't think reverting to this technical, possession-based stuff is the way forward for you guys to be successful.
Well, I don't know if you saw the Real Madrid versus City game, how they played against City on the counter. That they scored some incredible goals, but they look like a Premier League team, like an Eddie Howe team, really.
They look like an old Chelsea team. Exactly. That's how you win this competition.
That's how you win it.
All these people, obsessing with De Zerbi. That man is horrendous. like I don't understand his claim to fame. Has he even ever gotten a trophy outside of Ukraine? He's terrible. But they love him. For some reason, his name always comes up.
It's because it's not De Zerbi. I think if it was De Howe, then people might look at him differently. No, I'm joking. Kaz says, "Big up, Bobby, big up." Talk sense into our war friend Philip. Kaz also says he got Voldemort, who's 10 times better than Delap. It's questionable. I think Delap is the better Premier League player, in my opinion. James says, well, James Trafford was slightly different story. Man City being able to buy him back was, that's exactly what happened. Jess says, there's a comment towards the end I want Bobby to look at. Good point. Jess says, good point, Philip. The players we went for and missed out on were top-notch targets, but we weren't prepared to shop with the big boys just yet. Connor says, and I agree, could you ask the guest if we can have Josh Achipong? I've been asking.
I think he's for sale.
Yeah.
He is for sale. Feel free. They're all for sale.
They're all for sale, man. Don't hold back, Bobby. Says Chairs, tell us how you really feel about Maresca. Lion points.
Sorry, was Chess around last year when we had a session with Mitch and I predicted exactly what Maresca was going to do? And Eddie Howe cut the shit out of him. It was beautiful.
You were right. You were absolutely right. You were absolutely right about that. But Ches is new to the show, but you was absolutely right. But you were right about the scoreline and everything. You said it so confidently. Me and Mitch were nervous about the game. And Mr. Fairview was just like, no, you're going to win 2-0.
Here's how he's going to set up. This is what he's going to do with these players, right? This inverting bollocks that he does. And we got cooked. Okay, as predicted.
We got hooked. Did we get a player sent off that game? No, you did. So. You did, yeah. Lion Point says, in all honesty, I'm not paying attention to the manager rumors. My delusional self wants Pochettino, but all I can hope for is, that's the point I want to say, that the board makes the... Pochettino, what was your take on Pochettino?
A little bit too cavalier. I was just conceding way too many goals. Like you can't. It's like a lottery. You can't survive doing that.
Plus, go on. Go on.
I was just going to remind you of the time, given the amount that we got to go, but I don't know if you're going to go past midnight.
Yeah. If I can.
Okay, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm good to go. Yeah.
I was going to say Pochettino reminds me of like every time I see him, it reminds me of a guy that's like going through re- like he's in the like in the Indian summer of his life. Like he's like a hippie at 50. Like he's done everything. He's just in like he's just working for because it's fun.
I don't like managers that do stupid shit, right? Like play, like playing Chilwell at left wing and Colwell at left back, just unnecessary foolishness, right? Like it just aggravates you when you're watching the game. I'm not a coach. I've never been formally trained, but I can see that this is just not going to work. But you're doing it, and you're doing it
Right.
over and over, and that's where the frustration with Potts really came from.
Okay. So take us away, Bob. We're going to talk about Newcastle's finances for the next 10, 15 minutes. And this is meant to be the the show was going like this. We're talking about Chelsea's finances, Newcastle, Eddie Howe. And this is the part where it's meant to it's meant to go like this. So take it away, Bobby. I'm gonna start off with the next slide. In fact, let me take off the chat just for a moment so you can see everything. Well, I can see everything.
Yeah, but
Where is
just
what's going
go
on
ahead.
here?
You set the scene. Go ahead.
So, folks, in terms of just Bobby's forensically gone over Newcastle's finances for us. He's got us the structure and various other ways in terms of how Newcastle are functioning, and he's going to give us his take on where Newcastle are at financially going into this transfer window. So, and it probably has a ripple effect. We also spoke about Eddie Howe. We've talked about like this squad overhaul might be even more, even more. Could be a complete reset if Bobby's finances, Bobby's take on the Newcastle financial situation is anything to go by. So, Bobby, you've looked through this, you've combed through this. Take it away. What does all this mean for us? What's this is? This is taken obviously from Newcastle's 24-25 finances. This is Newcastle kicking off with Newcastle structure.
Yeah, look, I want to raise it a bit before we dive into the detail. No, I didn't go over it forensically. So folks,
Oh, sorry, sorry, folks.
This
Skimmed
is
through
me
it.
having heard from Philip that the accounts are out and he wants me to come on stream a couple days ago. Okay, so I immediately started looking around to see where Newcastle was in the news, and look, I was incredibly pleased. And this is a rival, not necessarily as a rival fan, just a fan of football in general. And I was a supporter of the Saudis investing in the EPL. I'm not against this stuff. I do not believe in protectionist kind of moves. It does not benefit the game. If there's more capital to come into the game, that's good in my mind for everyone. I believe that the PIF is in this for a profit. And Chelsea fans, even Newcastle fans, might disagree with that, or at least they have the preconceived notion that these guys just have endless oil money and they're prepared to do anything they want with it. The Middle East is going through a really a strategic change in terms of how they manage their national wealth. They're diversifying away from petrocarbons, as we know, and people thought that they're just here for sports washing. I think they see what Bowley saw, which is that the EPL is an undervalued asset. The difference between the PIF and a Bowley and Egbali is that when you have that much wealth to manage, you have to have good governance around it. And therefore, although they opportunistically bought Newcastle, decision making in terms of how capital is allocated will still take time. I was telling myself that for the last 4 years as I've been observing them, and as I've been talking to you, Philip, over the last year. And I started to get a bit impatient and say, well, these guys don't seem that interested. What's going on? Why aren't they making moves to put more money into the club to build a brand, just like how Roman built Chelsea's brand, just like how the Emirates built the City brand? Why is it taking them so long? And therefore, the announcements this week about the investments that were made, the loopholes that were properly exploited, because I mean, if Chelsea and Villa can do it, why can't Newcastle? Fair is fair. And so what you are seeing is the owners finally having that decision made at the PIF level to really now drive this strategy. And that's why I kept talking to you about a reset. Newcastle has the opportunity for a reset this summer. And I said that to you even before the announcement of the stadium purchase.
True.
Right. I said that to you before, right? Because I saw it as, again, an opportunity to refresh this squad. You got players that want to leave, let them leave. And then think carefully about what you want to do going forward. And I felt as though there's an opportunity to do that under an experienced manager who's accustomed managing clubs and doing well in Europe, right? So that's where I saw the opportunity. But with the announcement, what we see here is the PIF making a decision to make substantial investments into the club Newcastle and to then support your revenues going forward so that there's no more conversation about SCR and PSR and all this kind of thing. I wanted to put this diagram up so that fans can understand exactly how your ownership is structured. So there's an account on X. The guy's name is Gregory P. Cordell. You see it in the top right-hand corner. You should go to his profile and search for Newcastle. He publishes a lot of information on clubs, the structure around the ownership structure, and the financing structure, so that you can familiarize yourself with how money gets sent from the PIF into the club itself. All right, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just wanted folks to understand. PZ Newco Limited, that is the vehicle through which all the funding comes. And you can see on the left-hand side, the Public Investment Fund in green, right? So that is how they use that holding company to finance Newcastle, the club itself.
For the stadium as well, actually.
For anything that they're doing, right? And PZ Newco will also hold the companies that will buy assets from Newcastle. So you will see now that you'll have, this diagram is going to be expanded. You'll see new entities coming up here, which are all owned by PZ Newco, but they're buying assets from Newcastle, because you need a period, just like City did, to be able to invest in the squad, invest in players, build up that base to then, go forward with a more sustainable squad who can fight on all fronts. So there's a really important diagram to review, folks. PZ Newco Limited, they also publish financial statements. They're not yet released, but you should read those as you're reading the Newcastle United financial statements, because there are going to be layers of capital in there and transactions to purchase assets that will be disclosed in those accounts that will not be in the standalone Newcastle United accounts. So, any questions on that, Philip? Or are we good?
Just to add on the PZ Newcastle, because I also saw in the article, because you mentioned that holders, I forgot what article it was, but they were saying, because obviously Newcastle sold the stadium to themselves, they sold it to that PZ Newcastle holders thing, which they're actually supposed to be using also. That's also going to finance the new stadium. So rather than, what their point about that was, rather than putting the costs of the stadium on the club,
correct,
it's going on that particular, which is exactly what you said. So that's just to point that out.
So that diagram is going to expand to show the entities that are going to be doing those transactions with the club. Right. So Greg P. Cordell, you can expect him to publish that next. You've skipped the I want to, yeah, here we go. So look, again, these numbers are me just trying to tell the story to myself. So the first thing I wanted to know, what capital commitments have the PAF made to Newcastle since they've been here. And based on what I gleaned, just going back through all of the financial statements, they have actually committed £1 billion to Newcastle at this point in time. That's not chunk change, right? And therefore, if you consider that, and there's a problem for Eddie Howe, if you consider that he's been here for 5 of those years, that is considerable investment in the club, and therefore they'll be expecting some accountability for the performance this year.
Right.
So you've reached £1 billion. What does Newcastle have to show for it? Those are the conversations that the board will be having. Now, what is really interesting here are the 2 additional line items, and this is where I became pleased for you guys. The property asset purchases, so that's the leasehold improvements, because you guys don't actually own the actual St. James's Park. What was bought was the leasehold improvements, the actual stadium around it, right? Mm-hmm. So that in of itself, what they did was to put £176 million into a vehicle and told that vehicle buy the leasehold improvements from Newcastle, the club, which created that profit that you guys are now seeing for the 2025 year. The next thing that they did, which we just discovered, is that there was in September, which will be reflected in the 2026 accounts. So this is a prospective thing. This happened after the accounts have been released, the 2025 accounts. They also put in a further £106.5 million into Newcastle. I don't know if you were aware of that, Philip.
I had no clue. This has not been promoted well, I haven't read all the articles, but I had no clue that's what happened.
So if you when the I don't think the accounts the accounts for Newcastle have been published. So once you go into those accounts, you should see in the subsequent events note that they put in £106.5 million of additional cash into Newcastle
after the 24-25 period.
Yes. In September of 2025. So it would. So remember, the accounts cut off in June 2025.
June.
Right. Okay. So it would not be in there, but it is disclosed in the subsequent events note.
Right.
It says that there was a further £106 million that was put into the club. So Newcastle, in effect, has $282 million of new cash from your owners.
208. Oh, on top of the buying the stadium and the 160 million. So it's roughly 280
add the 2 of those numbers. Yeah, add those 2 numbers. So your owners mean business this summer. Okay.
They're not playing around.
They're not playing around, right? And so the board is deciding who do we allow to manage the players we buy with this money, and that's where Eddie Howe really needs to try to make the case for his track record over the last 5 years.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's going to be problematic. Okay. No, in fairness to him, he should have gotten this money before and then be evaluated. All right. That would be fair thing to do. But we're where we are, right?
We are where we are. Life's not fair.
Exactly. So Newcastle fans can take heart. You've got £282 million to odd or so that the owners have just put into the club to do some business this summer. I think that's a great story for folks to feel optimistic about. Any questions on that?
And I think it's probably been played down in the media because it makes no sense to go into a transfer window and say, "Hey, by the way, we got £280 million to spend everyone. We've got money, baby." Do you know what I mean? So it's like going into a bazaar in some faraway land and saying, "Hey, everybody, I got money. Like, give me, I will pay top end prices for all these things and stuff." It makes no sense to do that. And
here's the other thing. I don't think this is all that you have, by the way. This is just the starting point of what they put in. But sorry, you were about to ask me something.
Well, I was just about to add and say, this is before we actually sell certain assets in terms of players themselves, like your Gordons, your Tonali's, and Livramentos, who I think will go. This is before that.
And when did Isak get sold? August, which is also after June.
Yeah, but they keep on saying they're saying that this is the way the media is doing it is like the Isak money is given some room, but not a lot. But from what you're saying is
No,
like you're like
sorry. You talking about from a PSR perspective? When you say room, what do you mean?
they're saying
Spending
it,
power or
they're
PSR?
saying spending power. They're saying spending power of like from an SCR point of view. But again, I think I'm beginning to think that's again more and more like pleading poverty when it really isn't. Because I keep on thinking I did this because I do my AI version of finance, but I keep on thinking how can they keep on saying nah, but that money is only giving them a little bit of space, and I'm like, but 130 million, a little bit of space, like
But okay.
so.
But when you say space, you're thinking PSR, SCR.
Yeah.
Forget those, right? And by the way, and let's link this to the last part of the conversation. I actually think that you do not want to place in the European places this year. I think
Really?
you do not want to be subject. Listen, but these owners have just capitalized you to do a rebuild, the likes of which Newcastle fans have never seen. They will break a lot of budgets, okay, including the European SCR. You do not want to be dicking around in that West Ham Cup when you are trying to invest what I think is going to be $500 million of spending this summer.
Say that again.
I'll show you how we get to $500 million in a minute, okay? And again, guys, these are me just pulling numbers out of your financials. This is not a prediction. This is my interpretation of what I'm seeing and what I think they're going to do, okay? But what we can see here is that the owners have pulled their pockets and dropped £282 million in here. Let's go to the next slide.
Yep.
No, sorry, James. I'm seeing James's comment. Those are simply the contributions made to PZ Newco that we just saw in the diagram.
Okay. Yeah.
From the PIF, right? And so they're sitting at the PZ Newco level. Just go back a couple, Phil, so that we can. The folks are following. Just go back to the next one. So PZ Newco has been capitalized with that money. So it's sitting at a PZ Newco limited level, ready to be deployed down into Newcastle itself. Okay, so let's go to the third one. So let's go next one. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted to understand again, how are the owners actually supporting you from a revenue perspective to solve that PSR problem? Because this is you always think immediately PSR. If we spend all this money on players, can we actually support the cost under the squad cost ratio? So what I wanted to do though was to really break out to see what's been happening from the commercial revenues. Is the PIF actually putting money into the club? Okay.
Right.
And this is where you actually can see from the related party footnotes that in fact the PIF has increased its sponsorship revenue into the club by almost 50% year on year. So not only are they putting 280 million of fresh capital into to buy players, you can see them ramping up now to take care of the SCR side of things by doing sponsorship deals, PIF connected commercial activity, right? So you've announced your training ground, and that's got Saudi sponsorship connections, et cetera, et cetera. So they're handling.
I know you smiled when you saw that. I know you smiled to yourself when you saw that.
Of course. but you can see that not only they're putting the money where the mouths are, but they're also being sensible to make sure that once they get this capital in and start spending it, they can take care of things on the SCR PSR front. Right. So that's just my breakout of the revenue, just to understand what is normal revenue or what is Manchester City type support of the P&L. Let's hop to the next one because I think people are getting bored with these numbers.
I'm loving it because it's good news.
So the other thing that I wanted to think about then, well, based on the operating profits. So there's accounting profits, right, which includes amortization. Amortization is just an accounting construct.
Yeah.
So what money are you actually generating as core earnings from your business? And I went back to, a couple years to see what was happening, just to understand, well, okay, we have the accounts for 2025. So therefore, what is the 2026, this current year that we're in, to June 2026? How are those profits going to come through to actually provide even more income coverage, if you like? Okay.
Right.
So you'll pick up for your round of 16 exit 57 million or so, I estimated from the Champions League. If I add that to your actual numbers from the P&Ls for these years, now you have to rent St James's Park from PZ Newco because you no longer own it, right? So that's what you have to pay as rentals. Then you have to add ESAC, and I forgot my apostrophe there, but my estimate after agents fees is that your profit from ESAC will be 82.5 million pounds.
Right.
Okay. So therefore your operating income this year to me should be somewhere around the 117 mark, from which you will then take out amortization and all the other accounting type entries. Okay. But what we want to do is isolate the core earnings. What revenue are you making? Take away your operating expenses, add what you're going to pick up as of Champions League this year. You'll have a new expense of paying for St James's Park, and then of course you need to take in that large profit from ESAC. Any questions on this?
Just go a little bit back in terms of what you said about the operating costs in terms of the ISAC. Excuse me, not operating cost, operating income. What does operating income actually mean?
So you when you think about an actual standard P&L for a club, right? Amortization of player contracts is an expense. Right, this is where you're so you want to know that's not a cash event, that doesn't generate or reduce cash.
It's
right?
not real. It's not real.
It's not real.
Not real.
So what I'm trying to do here is to isolate the real cash entries. Turnover, what money are you taking in? Operating expenses, what money are you paying out? So you can have a true picture of what cash you'll be left with.
Right.
And so you see for 2025, your operating profit, just before amortization, you've got a small 10 million pound loss. But then so I'm assuming that for 2026, you'll have a similar loss, right? I'm just assuming a run rate. And then I'm adding what you're going to get for the Champions League in the current year, ESAC, less the cost of the.
I get it. Right?
Right.
I get it.
So I'm saying this is how much cash you're going to generate in 2020, in the 2026 financials.
2026. Yeah. That makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So therefore, where do we land with all of this? So if you just go to the next page. So what I'm saying is, we had the PIF injections, right? We have the intercompany receivable from group, which is the money from the stadium sale and various asset sales that have taken place. And then you've got your adjusted your cash generated from operations, which the bulk of which is the ESAC money in the Champions League, right? So that 2026 adjusted operating income, that's my estimate of what you're going to do this year once you include ESAC and the Champions League money, which means that you have gross resources available to spend on players of 413 million pounds is my best estimate for Newcastle fans.
That sounds absolutely insane. And I know that you don't want to say, not that you don't want to say, I know I shouldn't think in SCR terms, but I'm going to just step back a little bit and because I think it connects with what you're saying. So 413 million plus in terms of resources, right? when you're thinking about this, when you're looking at the squad and Newcastle, so say for instance, so I've estimated, this is me, Philip, estimate. I've estimated previously on the last week's show that Newcastle can possibly make from player sales. I think I've got 305 million from 2026. Livramento, Gordon, Tonali out, Osola, Willock. Those are the main sales. Does that have any impact on what you're kind of on what you have here in terms of, because obviously you've got real money here, and I guess what I'm thinking of in terms of player sales,
It'll be additive
is
because
this,
I'm not predicting player sales.
so it'll be additive. It'll be additive to this essentially.
So if you estimated 300, that means that your new sporting director will be going in with a battle fund of about 700 million pounds. He about to do a Liverpool and more.
Yeah, I think, and I do think in terms, but I've also estimated that I think we're going to have to spend about 325 million just to replace those players and to add.
Well,
and with what you're saying about 413, sorry, go on, Bob. You was going to say something just there. You were about to say something.
You finish. I think you were about to make the point I was about to make.
It looks like it would, what we have ready would more than match that.
Well, what I'm saying is, if you're saying replacements will cost what's gonna be sold, that's net team stand still. What I'm saying is there's a further 400 million now to take it to the next level.
Right.
That's what it appears to me based on the that 106.5, that 106,500, that money is paid. That money has been approved by the PAF. It's sitting in PZ Newco. The intercompany receivable from group, that is the stadium purchase and the asset sales. Because that's not been settled. I should have labeled that differently. That's the stadium and the asset. Those are asset purchases. What I have there is intercompany receivable from group. That's money received from selling Newcastle assets to the group.
So then, in your, sorry, go on.
So that's real money again that we've seen in the financial statement. So the only estimate here is what I think is the operating income for the current year.
Yeah.
And that number is primarily made up of my estimate of what you'll get from the Champions League and the proceeds from the sale of ESAT.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's that projection aside. Well, it's not aside; it's together with it. So I was going to ask is, from going back to obviously what PIF have invested themselves and the stadium stuff. I guess I'm trying to get into the mindset of PIF. From your experience, Bobby, when an organization or whatever they are, like PIF, are moving like this before summer, what do you think is their thought process? Because I think this is going to lead off to Eddie and to the squad. What do you think is their? What are they? Because it sounds like from what you're saying is that they're looking to really, they're really looking to stamp their mark in terms of how they want to go from here on forward.
In simple terms, everybody expected the PIF to do what Man City did. All I'm saying is it's just happening 3 years later because they have had a lot of things to think about. They're in golf, they're in boxing, they're in all kinds of things that they're in. And they finally said, okay, yeah, we need to now prioritize Newcastle. And I think what they're about to do is they've capitalized your balance sheet, put in a strong CEO. Obviously, I like what I heard from him, right? He sounds like the right guy. So far, so good, right? And now you've got a strong captain here to deploy this money. That's what I think they've geared to me. I mean, it's objectively there. This is real money that's in the audited accounts. Okay. Right. Even my 117 million there, is ESAT and it's Champions League money. Straightforward. Right. Those are real things that we know happened already. you will collect your prize money from UEFA, and you will collect your money from Liverpool. So that to me is what they've put that powder keg there, and they're ready to make it rain on the market in June.
Wow, you guys have heard it. I'm on cloud nine, really. Ches says it's not boring, obviously, in terms of the finances. It's important to understand this because it gives us reason to believe that the owners are more involved and invested in our future than many of us believed. And I've been listening to Bob. Ches, obviously, this is, I think, your second time on the show, but Bobby will even say, like he said, Bobby said right at the beginning of this, like I've been questioning BIF about how serious they are about Newcastle, and he has. He honestly has since he's been on the show. This is my first time hearing Bobby this. I'm not even going to say positive because it sounds like he's just positive for no reason. He's positive on the back of evidence that he's seen in terms of the investment that PIF have put.
Reading the
And he's
audited
like,
financial statements.
reading exactly, reading the audited financial statements that, oh wow, this is like, that's why it's coming across to me, Bobby. Anyway, like this is really serious. Like this is like serious financial movement
Why
from
else would
Newcastle.
they have better things to do with his money than have it sit in PZ Newco? It's here for a reason.
It is here for a reason. It is here for a reason. James says sounds about right. Isak was around 50 million when we signed him. No, we signed Isak for around 65 million. We sold him. It depends on who you ask, but just put it
125.
off to 125 million. Obviously, we've had him for 3 years, so you took off some of that book value. So yeah, I think to say that, I think what did you say, Bobby? And you took off agent fees. I think you
Agent's
said about
fees.
80,
Yeah,
85 million.
his book value in my mind was 30 million. So he was bought for about 60. Was halfway through his contract, 3 out of 6 years, so that's 30 million. I took that away from 125 million, which is the reported sales price to Liverpool. But then I also took out another 12.5 million for agents fees.
Right. So, jeez. Adrian says, "I hope we don't get." Adrian says, "I hope we don't get charged 100 million for James Garner."
Well, look, I mean, to be fair, if you got 300 million of sales to do, what we talking about is a budget of $750 million. Do you care? Go get the players you want. That's what City did. Remember how they built their portfolio, right? They spent the money, and that's just what you have to do. And here's the thing: splashing money like that builds the club's brand. Don't underestimate how many fans get reinforced with that kind of spending.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to attract some attention, which will attract some new fans, strengthen the current fan base. Everybody's energized. The owners are investing. Let's go.
Adrian says Bobby's saying Christmas is coming early.
Christmas came in September, mate, with that 106 million bucks that you're seeing on the top there.
Yeah, exactly. James says, not so weird. I'm a little bit scared. I want to. I feel a bit like that as well. I'm a little bit scared. I want to know if we do keep. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't do keep Eddie, that we tell him to go on a long holiday and leave it to Ross. Okay, for me, Eddie never, like, there's this thing about Eddie, like, wanting to be in charge of everything. Eddie Howe was on holiday when Paul Mitchell decided to leave the club. He was called back from holiday to do transfers, which he didn't bank to do. So I think Eddie, if he does stay on, so I'm sure of more than, it looks like 67% of Newcastle's fan base, chagrin to the chagrin of 60% of Newcastle's fan base, if Eddie does stay on, he's going to be on holiday whilst Ross Wilson and the rest of the. I wanted to add something to what you're. I don't know how much it adds to what you're saying, Bobby. Our CEO was talking about some of the changes he's made within Newcastle. and that is that the decision-making process. So last year, the transfer window was particularly difficult because we had to get approval for transfers from Saudi, which took a long, long time for whatever reason. What then he said, what's happened now is that approval process. You obviously talked about the structure just there, and you reminded me when you talked about it. That approval process now become localized. His word, which is happening in Newcastle, and it's happening, which I take to mean within the boardroom here in Newcastle, with
PZ
obviously
Newco.
Peasy, right? So that's what you're thinking. Peasy Newco, the Reuben brothers, and obviously sporting director. Like everything's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
So does that to me adds to what you're saying, where they're like, okay, we've got money. Now we need to make sure the approval process is aligned with it. We need to be quick. We need to be fast, and we need to be decisive. That's how I take it to be.
Well, I agree with you, but I'll say it slightly differently because it ties
Okay.
into how I started, right? The PIF is occupied with several projects. They're building islands. They're building tourism. It's mad. You guys are on a long list of things that you're doing, right? And they had you, and they just never got around to you. And they said, "Well, okay, if you do need money for a transfer, just let us know. We'll approve it." The problem is to get to their investment committee in Riyadh to get that approval meant that you missed out on transfers. They've learned that lesson, which apparently your CEO has just confirmed, and said, "Here's the money. Here is 400. Here's 280 million pounds of dry powder. You got the ESAT money, and you got the Champions League money. Now you are empowered to spend it. You don't have to come back to us anymore. We've pre-approved it. Here you go.
Leave me alone. Here's the money. Leave me alone, please. Just
well, they've not put it in the club itself, so it's you see that big receivable there. So it still needs to come from PZ Newco. But in any case, those guys are in control at the Newcastle level as well, right? So what he's saying is, we've got our money, we've got our war chest, and we'll be calling the shots from here. So we'll move quickly, we'll overpay when we have to, and we'll get the people that we need because we've got a lot of money. That's what it looks like to me.
Adrian says, this content is absolute gold, and I fully agree. I'm so thankful to you, Bobby, in terms of the work you've put in. So this content is absolute gold. Thanks, gents. We couldn't get this time and depth anywhere else.
Respect to you, Adrian.
And Ches also agrees. Spot on, Adrian. And finally, James says, Bobby, you're forgetting Newcastle is likely to be the only football club now as well selling all four clubs in the Saudi. You're forgetting that Newcastle is likely to be the only football club now as well selling all four clubs in Saudi. I don't get that. Yeah. I'm not following that one, James, but there is rumors galore that multi-club ownership is coming as well. So that's something to look at in the future. There's like adverts for like Newcastle Scouts in Sweden and other places like that. So there's all of that to go. So, Bobby, before we conclude the show, in a nutshell, from what you've seen and obviously what you've described in terms of Newcastle's finances and looking at the transfer window, I want you to kind of, as you have done, like giving us your take on, give us your conclusion about where Newcastle are at, where it appears, and obviously, like you said, we're not saying that we're not saying that I know, we're just looking at accounts, we're guesstimating or estimating how it looks for the future. But give us your conclusion from what from everything that we've discussed today. How Newcastle looks like Newcastle are gearing up and are likely to approach the transfer window, what that means for Eddie Howe, and if not Eddie Howe, then give us your opinion on what kind of manager, or if you have a name of manager or managers that would be best placed for this particular phase of where Newcastle could be heading to?
Look, I think there are a couple blueprints floating around, right? I believe that the PIF is running the Roman model. I had my doubts before, but this size of capital commitment is Roman style capital commitment, right? Coming in meaning business. So I think Newcastle fans should feel comfortable that they are investing in winning. Okay. The other blueprint is the city blueprint. So this is where you need to know actually see how they deploy those resources in the summer. When they go for a player, are they nickel and diming, right? I don't expect that they'll be, but we're a couple months away. We will see how they approach transfers, whether or not they drop the money. I think you're in an interesting position right now, which is an opportunity from a squad development perspective, but bad news, I think, for Eddie.
Right.
Where I think he's been given an adequate chance. He's not shown me personally that he should be handed this war chest. In fairness to him, he should have gotten this investment before, so maybe that will be the thought process. But I think there's an opportunity for a fresh start with a manager who is accustomed doing things in Europe. So the third blueprint that I'm thinking about is the Manchester United, the way they handled their season, the way not being in Europe helped to develop a winning culture and mentality in that team now, which I think they can build on going forward. I see next year as a gap year for yourselves to not be under the more stringent UEFA rules and to actually construct the squad in the next 2 windows or so, how you need it to be, right? And then, and what we're also seeing is management of the P&L. You're seeing them investing, increasing their sponsorships by 50%. So that as that continues, you will see that SCR domestically in the UK becomes less of an issue, so that when you get into Europe, depending on which players you register, the cost of those players, et cetera, then you start solving for that and solving for Europe going forward. But again, Manchester City has left a blueprint for how to do that. Manchester City is never in problems, but they're not shy about spending. Right?
No.
Right. So this comes with the P&L management, right? And this is where, as you develop that commercial revenue through your Saudi Arabia partnership, and that's where that multi-club thing is going to work. If you have Saudi clubs close to Newcastle, right? You're going to have Saudis more interested in Newcastle, which means that Saudi companies will want to market products using the Newcastle brand. So the entire thing in my mind is symbiotic, is all heading in the right direction. As you correctly pointed out, I was very concerned about this the last 2 times I've been on this stream. I have been questioning the commitment of the owners, but I think what they've done here is indisputable, and I like the songs of the CEO. So look, I think y'all in for an exciting time this summer, but maybe not Eddie Howe.
And any manager candidates you think that can handle this war chest and the pressure that it brings?
Listen, you guys got to be looking for big names, big top of the table names. I'm talking about. You should be in for the Enriquez, these kinds of guys. Not Maresca. He is not to be trusted with his money. Proper names that have won big trophies. I can see your board handing this money to that kind of top tier manager, because it's a new era. You don't just put $500 million into a club for shits and giggles, right?
No,
it's a new era.
No. Well, that was indeed a high note. You're right. You're right about the order of the show. It's way better to end it on this rather than it was on and then go back to it's good to edge Chelsea than Eddie. It's better to start how we ended it here. So really, really interesting updates there, and thank you so much, Bobby, for that. And guys, we talked about myself and Bobby. We talked about Chelsea's financial situation and kind of the various where it's heading to, which is not a good place at the moment. It is really, really. I didn't. I personally didn't estimate that it was going to that it's this dangerous in terms of where they're heading to. And Bobby D told us in terms of all the various situations that are there at the moment. And then obviously we talked about Eddie, how everybody's in different camps. It looks like, if you're looking online, that there's more Eddie Howe out than there are Eddie Howe in. In fact, myself and a few others are becoming outliers, fighting to the end. But that's cool. I can live with that. And we obviously ended the show on a really, really high note, talking about how PIF have been moving in the background, reading actual audited accounts with the expert help and perspective of Bobby himself. PIF seemed to be moving in quietness but it dangerously good, shall I say, going into the transfer window with a lot of expectations. Yes, big names are going to go in terms of players, but there's going to be big money that's looking to be invested into the club this summer. And it's going to take a big manager to do it. Is Eddie Howe the man to do it? Well, that question remains open. But I want to thank Bobby. You've been absolutely phenomenal. You made a lot of Toon fans really happy. I know that was not what you set out to do, but we're just reading facts. We're just reading facts in terms of what we've seen in the papers. I want to thank the chat. You guys have been ringing off the chat phenomenally well. Please do continue to like and share and subscribe. Been really encouraged to hear in your comments as well. Bobby, you're a legend. Good show. All these other things. You guys have been absolutely
Love this
superb.
chat. Love this chat. Big up to the guys. Have a good night. I always enjoy being here with these guys.
Exactly. So you've been phenomenal. As always, folks, make sure you look after yourselves. Have a great bank holiday. And as always, folks, God bless you all. Take care now.